paper. Don't worry about technology now. Just take pen and paper and write down all the things that's going on in your head. Business or personal, it doesn't matter. Anything that pops up into your head now, just write it down and I'll give you 1 minute. Right, that's 1 minute. And it's amazing how long that can feel. If you're not busy with the next thing or the next meeting or the next phone call or the next email, you just slow down for a minute and that's the effect of that. Okay, now, if you wouldn't mind just interacting again and just telling us, just doing this 1 minute exercise in terms of how you feel. Just give us some words and then I'll say something about the response that people normally feel about this. Just use your chat and just write down 1 or 2 words for how does it make you feel. And Debbie, once again, I cannot see the chat at the moment, so if you wouldn't mind just responding to that.
So we have more spacious, almost relieved, being in control, slightly lighter, overwhelmed with what to do, focused,
okay,
calmer.
So what's okay, great stuff. So yeah, the chat is coming up now, but thank you very much for that feedback. And one of the nicest emails I ever received after a workshop was when we did Johannesburg, and we did the mind dump during the day. And the next morning, I received an email from a lady that wrote to me, and she said, I really enjoyed the mind dump. And this is what we call this exercise is a mind dump. I really enjoyed the mind dump yesterday. And last night I sat down and I did the mind dump like you can't believe. I was busy for 2 hours, but here's the benefit. For the first time in many months, I had a night of uninterrupted sleep. So just after a minute, you already now felt more in control, you felt lighter, and you felt more relieved. Yes, some people do feel overwhelmed, but look at all the stuff they have to do. But interestingly enough, I can guarantee you that nothing that you wrote down in this minute has not been part of your life already. It's just maybe it's visible now, and when things are visible, we can do more about it than having it all just buzzing around in the head. Okay, so now that your head is calm, now let's continue with our conversation about slowing down to speed up. And let's focus on the what. And I'm just going to take a sip of water if you don't mind. What is the central idea in today's conversation? And the central idea is to do things at the appropriate, I call it speed if you don't mind, or pace. Now, what does this mean? This doesn't mean that do everything slowly. Don't get me wrong. When I talk about slow down to speed up, and I like to use the concept of slow productivity. Now, slow productivity doesn't mean do things at a snail's pace. It doesn't mean do nothing. It doesn't mean lower productivity. It means do things at the appropriate speed. And as Debbie wrote to you and Dan wrote to you in the email, speed reading, I think if you can read with comprehension at a bigger speed, that makes sense, doesn't it? Speed typing, that makes sense, doesn't it? But search and attack, search and attack, search and attack, search and attack, or underutilized areas of productivity improvement is in, increasing the type speed of everybody in the company. Speed reading sounds good. Speed typing sounds good. What about speed yoga? How about speed editing? Do it at your speed. You want to run fast. But if you think I can run the marathon at 100 meters pace, it's not going to work. You have to run the marathon at its own pace. So here's another little exercise. And some of you on the call may be familiar with this. Let's do it again. Just read that couple of seconds and make a mental note of how many F's you see there. How many F's? And if you think you have the answer, just put it into the chat and Debbie will see how many F's there are. How many F's? Put it in the chat and let's Debbie can respond to us.
Okay, everyone's still counting.
Okay.
Oh no, I missed it. We've got lots of, we have 2,
Okay.
3, 4.
Isn't this, it never ceases to amaze me. We're all looking at the same thing. 27 people looking at the same thing. And it's a simple thing, count the F's. And we get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Now, how many were there? And I did not change the slide, I can guarantee you. So those of you who didn't get 6 probably missed the F's in the ofs. Now, we missed those F's in the ofs, I think, because it's a short little word compared to the rest. And also, it simply doesn't sound like it. It sounds like a viv, oh, viv. So we miss the F's in the ofs. It's a short little word. It doesn't sound as if it's what we're looking for, and therefore we ignore it. And I don't expect you to respond to it, but reflect over it over a glass of water or wine or tea or coffee or whatever over the weekend. How many opportunities in your life, how many F's in your life have you missed because you rushed? And no, I didn't ask you to rush, but when we get an exercise like this, it's almost like natural, instinctive to read it as quickly as possible, because now the teacher wants the answer and I've got to give the answer very quickly, and then we miss things. So slow down, speed up. Very interesting. A friend of mine, they had a conversation with friends of theirs, and his daughter, that were a couple of years old, was part of the conversation, and he just handed out this exercise for them for a bit of fun. And people said 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and his daughter, hey, he said, but Daddy, there are 6 F's. And then other people laughed and said, ha, 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 ha. You can't even read. How can you know how many F's there are? Yes, that's the point. She could not read, but she knew what an F looked like. So let's not overcomplicate our lives. Let's keep it simple. And count the number of F's. Somebody once said, by the way, that he saw 7 F's. So I asked him to read the sentence to me, and so that I could see the 7th one. And here's what he said. Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of many years. So yeah, creative F there. What's the point? The point is, when slowing down to speed up, you don't have to do huge, big things. There's a lovely saying that huge doors swing on small hinges. Small things you're going to make and change in your life after our conversation today. And remember that no learning has taken place unless you do things differently. So we can be together for an hour and it can be lovely and all of that kind of stuff. But unless you're going to do something, it's, pardon me, it's also not really useful. I'm going to quote Alan again. I think it's relevant to what we're doing today. In the introduction to his book, he says, I've distilled over a quarter of a century of learning patterns and try and error within these 200 pages. And here's the important thing. My intent, as him, is to help you help yourself. It's my advice and your discipline. We cannot do it the other way around. So, pardon me, in our conversation today, it's like, I wouldn't say my advice, but the thoughts are yours, but it's your discipline to go and do something about them. Okay, I'm just going to mute myself. The wonder of the mute button. Okay, so small changes. So we're still thinking about what is this about. Let's take a reality check. This is a couple of years ago, so it may be even worse now. The EU loses 20 billion euro per year due to work-related stress. And it's been shown over and over that this rushing around leads to higher levels of stress than necessary. The UK overwork burnout. In the US at that time, they lost $17 billion every year due to losses in worker productivity. And in Japan, people literally work themselves to death. I'm sure you've heard of that phenomenon. Now, I'd like to tell you a story about the starfish, about killing ourselves and taking time out to make sure that we don't. Now, a starfish, as I understand it, I'm not a biology person, it doesn't have a brain, but it has what's called a neural ring. And the function of the neural ring is to coordinate the movement of the starfish so that it goes in a coordinated fashion. So if the one leg finds food of quality 8 out of 10, it tells the neural ring, hey, here's nice food over here. And the neural ring then says to everybody else, hey, let's move in that direction. So if the neural ring is cut, coordination is lost. Every leg of the starfish still knows that it must go and look for food. And the thing that tears itself apart. Now, I haven't found scientific evidence for this, but that's urban legend. And it just makes sense. So what's the point here? The point is take time, slow down, and decide what your life purpose is about. I'd like to refer to this again a little bit later on. What is your life about? So that you have a coordinating mechanism so that the various areas of your life can work together, and your business, of course, is included in that. Pardon me, to make sure that you have an effective and a productive life. Otherwise, we can easily kill ourselves. Here's another example of what this is all about. You're probably familiar with the Bermuda Triangle. What happens there? Things disappear. So they say. Now, I'd like you to introduce you to a concept which is the Bermuda Triangle of your life. The Bermuda Triangle of your productivity Bermuda Triangle. Now, here's a task for you for after today. Think about your day-to-day life, work life, personal life, and see if you can identify 3 things that create your Bermuda Triangle. For example, email, interruptions, meetings, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And you know, if you combine all of that with your daily rush, you've got a Bermuda Triangle where your productivity might just disappear. So what this is about is slowing down all of this stuff. But why don't we? Why not slow down? Because people who rush, it's been shown, make 20 to 25% more mistakes. They create rework. I don't know about you, but I don't like to do the same thing over. But the quote by John Wanamaker at the bottom also says something. People who cannot find the time for recreation are obliged sooner or later to find time for illness. But we know these things, but why don't we slow down? I'd like to ask you to pop into the chat again, and just 1 or 2 words. If you were to explain to somebody, oh, you know, I've seen the bad side of rushing. Why do you think we still rush? Just 1 or 2 words in the chat, and Debbie will pick up on that. Why are we rushing, do you think?
Habit, deadlines, unrealistic expectations. If you don't, you stay behind. No choice, not enough time, pressure, expectations of self, sense of duty, competition, not to tick all the boxes, bad planning.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, everybody. I'd like to pick up on check the boxes. My definition of productivity is definitely different from the traditional definition of productivity, where it had to do with check more boxes, etc. The way I see productivity is to figure out what your important things are, and let's call them your right things. To do the right things with as little effort as possible. I'm like a hardworking, lazy guy. I work very hard at finding ways to do things easier. And I believe that progress in life comes around as a result of lazy people. Think automatic garage door openers, think sliding gates, think TV remote. It was not super productive people, but lazy people that thought about those things. So all those reasons are true, but we can do something about them because we can control some of those things, and we'll explore them. Slowing down, as I mentioned, is not having lower productivity, but what slowing down is a mindset. Now, the words came up, I don't have a choice. I'd like to challenge that. And whoever said that, you're welcome to contact me afterwards. It's a mindset. If I believe I have to rush, then I will rush. If I believe I don't have the time, I won't have the time. If I believe my life is hectic, my life will be hectic. I know it's like hard words, but we have a choice about what we allow to happen inside our mind. Slowing down is about creating a happier and a lighter and a more productive workplace. Just imagine for a moment. Think about your workplace, the way it used to be and the way it's now with Zoom. Somebody said Zoom, 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 Zoom. It's just Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. And at the end, we were all zoomed out. So if you could slow down a little bit and make your workplace a little bit lighter, just imagine that things just happened a little bit at a manageable pace, not crammed with back-to-back meetings and all that kind of stuff. Slowing down is about freeing up time so that you have more time for your family, your free and your leisure time. It's just getting in touch with who you are really are and what's important to you. Your neural ring, so that your starfish doesn't get broken apart. Stop, look, and listen. It's a proverbial, smell the roses kind of thing. And do things at the appropriate pace. So that's what slowing down is about. Some examples where slowing down was not followed. I think that's a bit of a mess there. No, nothing, not necessary to say anything more about that. There was a story of a company in the US, they're a beer company, and they developed a brand new fast process to brew the beer. They put it in the market and it didn't sell. Why not? Because they did not take the time to even taste the beer that came out at the other end. So a big mistake there. I don't want to make time for illness. A nice story about applying, and I want you to think about this and see how can you apply it every day. The story is that Garry Kasparov, who's a chess champion, if he was not sure about the move to make, he sat on his hands so that he could not move the wrong piece into the wrong spot. So when you're not sure about the decision to make, and you don't have to physically sit on your hands, but at least metaphorically sit on your hands for a few minutes and reflect and don't rush your decisions. There's nothing like sleeping on something. There's nothing like if somebody asks you to do something for them, to say to them, I would really love to help you with that. Let me think about that. I'll come back to you tomorrow about that. Take control that you can about these kind of things. Sit on your hands. Don't rush decisions. Yet we tend to rush because of the conditioning that you mentioned in the chat, and thank you for that feedback. I like this quote by Mahatma Gandhi: speed is irrelevant if you're going in the wrong direction. So I'd like to ask you this question. Just in the chat, what do you think is more important? It's a kind of a trick question, but just give your gut feel response. What is more important, speed or direction, when you want to travel somewhere? What's more important, speed or
direction? No votes for speed so far.
Okay.
Yep. And everyone says direction.
Okay, great stuff. So let's think about that. What if you point your car in the right direction? Let's say I want to drive to Joburg from Cape Town. I point my car north, I'm in the right direction. Then I switch the car off. Will I ever get to Joburg in that mode? No. So this is just my way of thinking. I asked the trick question, what's more important? So I think both are equally important, direction and speed. But I think the more appropriate question would be, what should come first? First point my car north and then I go. So speed and direction are both important, but don't rush in the wrong direction. I can drive very efficiently at 200 kilometers an hour, whatever the case may be. And then I see Durban in front of me, and that's not where I want to be. So Direction first, then speed. Okay, so that was just positioning what this is about today. The idea, the central idea is then do things at their appropriate pace. So why is this important? How can it affect you? I'd like to share with you just a few examples. You saw this in the email as well. The Tony, the American company, what they found, or what their philosophy rather, is slowing down at key times to use dialogue for deep diagnosis allowed the business to power up. So their slogan is the important one that I'd like you as a takeaway: slow down to power up. And they then said that the time so-called lost at the front end of while slowing down translated into clarity and speed and strength. And when they implemented this approach, they found that their customer satisfaction more than tripled, their market share and their profits rose significantly, employee engagement increased 30%, and safety incidents dropped over 70%. Now, these are not only specific outcomes, but the idea is, why is this important? And I challenge anybody to say that if you can achieve these kind of results by slowing down, then that's an important, that makes it important enough for you to consider slowing down. Another example, IBM, they wanted people to be able to make decisions quickly. So they had their 72 hours values jam, so-called, where everybody in the company all over the world was requested to put in their ideas of what the values of IBM should be. Why? At the bottom you see, rather than burden our people with excessive controls, we are trusting them to make decisions and act based on values they themselves shaped. And that's such an important thing. You know, I don't know about your personal life and your business life, but it's about mission statement. Sometimes companies feel obliged to have a mission statement and let's go. We've got to have this mission statement out by tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. You might have a mission statement, but it's probably not going to be good because you didn't involve people in it. I'm just picking up on the lower point here by Samuel Palmisano. Stephen Covey also said, no involvement, no commitment. How can you expect your employees to be committed to a company mission statement if they have not been involved in some way of creating it? Let me give you a practical example. A company of about 24, 25 people asked me once to help them with their company values. And we were all in the room. Then we broke the group up into pairs. And each pair had to come up with 5 values that they thought were the most important. And then we put together 2 and 2, so we had 4 groups of 4. Then we had groups of 8. Then we had everybody together in the end. So everybody was involved in the process. And when we finally ended up with 5 prioritized values, everybody felt that I was a part of this process. So it took them time. It took them a half a day to do this. But it's again a question of slow down and speed up. Final example of why this is important is a company, Ipswich. They encouraged more personal time, and there was no praise in that organization for weekend or after hours. Now, what happened? More personal time, no rush, no weekends, etc. As a consequence, their staff turnover was half of the industry, and their sales increased by 33%. Now, those of you in business, your own business or working in a larger company, what does it cost your business to have staff turning over? You have to rehire, that whole process on onboarding everybody and upskilling them and whatever. What could the impact be for your company if you could halve your staff turnover annually and if you could increase your sales? And this was a consequence of slowing down. I'd just like to mention another quote by Stephen Covey, who said, if you pick up one end of a stick, you also pick up the other end of that stick. If I pick up this side of this pen, I get the other side of this pen. If I want to write in blue, I'd better pick up the blue pen and not the red pen. So you have a choice after today, and well, you have a choice right now. Are you going to do something about the suggestions that I share with you today or not? And I'm not here to judge that decision. Just be sure. Or just be assured that if you pick up that decision of not doing anything about it, then of course nothing will change. But if you want different results, you need to choose a different, you pick up a different stick. So can it produce superior results? I think it can. Now let's get practical. Now what? We discussed the what. What is this about? It's about doing things at the appropriate pace. We explored why it's important. And again, if you have any questions, just pop it into the chat and Debbie can pick it up. And I don't mind being interrupted. Just pop any question into the chat that you want to, and I'll respond to that in real time. But now what? What can you do to implement this idea in your life? What are some of the strategies to slow down, to speed up? And I'd like to give you the big picture that comes from the work of David Allen and his well-known book, Getting Things Done. Now, David uses the metaphor of an aeroplane to connect. Now, I like his definition of work. And think about this as well. Work is not just the 8 to 5 stuff that we do to earn an income. Work is anything in your life that is not yet exactly the way you want it to be. So you want to change your hair, you want to change your COVID hairstyle to your post-COVID hairstyle, you've got work to do. You want to invite friends over for having like a party, you've got work to do. You want to change your career, you've got work to do. So there's various levels of work. And let's begin with the concept of you sitting in an aeroplane. Your name is on the aeroplane, it's your life, it's your plane. You can fly your life to wonderful places. Now, some of the words that came up earlier was like hectic and frantic and messy and unplanned and chaotic. Let's think about the runway. You're sitting on the runway and you're ready to take off. But on the runway, you have lots of rubble and rocks and goats are walking around, etc. What needs to happen first before you can take off? You've got to take control of the runway. Now, in your day-to-day activities, being on this call today is part of today's runway. What you're going to do afterwards is on today's runway. Driving back home, if you're still in that environment, is today's runway. And everything that you're going to do today, all the emails, all the meetings, is runway stuff. Now, so many people, the runway is out of control, and then they're stuck on the runway. So if you want to have a better life at different levels of your life, I'm going to share them with you quickly, you have to first get the runway under control. If your runway is out of control, you cannot take off. And you cannot have meaningful projects. You cannot have areas of focus. That's back to the starfish. The legs of the starfish is areas of focus. Now, what are the legs in your life? Like family, career, fitness, money, etc. Have something that binds that together, your personal mission statement. Your short-term goals suffer, your long-term goals suffer, and your life purpose suffers. If your runway is out of control, you cannot really enjoy these other things. And I think that there should be a golden thread between what you do on the runway and your life purpose. So every email you send, you should be able to ask the question, how does this email help me live my life purpose? But you see, you cannot answer that question if you haven't taken the time up front to develop your life purpose. So just to give me an idea and to give us an idea, in the chat, just type yes or no. And the question is, do you have something like a life purpose or a personal mission statement or personal values? Just yes or no to that. And again, Debbie will tell us the yeses or the nos.
A lot of yeses, Gerrit.
Okay.
And also, and a question from Roland, who says he missed what is the difference between 30 and 40K? 40 feet, I think.
40 feet. Okay. I'll just refer back to that. Let me go back one slide. So your actions, 30 and 40 is like short term and long term. Now, I feel very flexible with this. And I'm not pedantic about using short term and long term, etc. So, Roland, does that answer your question, I hope? If not, just ask again.
And then here we have sometimes, kind of, I think so, so not as clear as the first few yeses. So a lot of us are feeling that our life purpose
Okay.
is a little bit more work, clearly.
Yeah, no, and it's not the thing of sitting down at a coffee shop and saying, "Ooh, let me work out my life purpose." It's something that you think about and you return to that, and it's an ongoing job. And of course, I think your values in your life, let me use the word governing values. What does that mean? You sort out about your values, but they should govern your decisions. That's why they should be governing values. You must move your values from the wall to the hall, so to speak. What do you do? And it takes time to do that, but I think values can change over time. You know, when you begin your career, you have certain priorities. Towards the end of your career, you have different priorities. You value different things. Okay, so why is all of this important, this whole mission statement thing that I'm talking about? It's really important to have your top priorities in place, because that enables you to say yes to certain things in your life and to say no to other things in your life. It enables you to know what your top priorities are, and then you can escape your Bermuda Triangle by saying no to the things that are not aligned with your priorities. And every time you say no to something that is not aligned with your priorities, you say yes to something that is aligned with your priorities. So I think it's really, really important to decide what's important to you up front. One example, if you think about Steve Jobs, you probably know what he used to wear on a regular basis, well, every day. Sneakers and jeans and a turtleneck. So why? He said, I decided once what I'm going to wear. And then I don't have to spend time and energy every morning stressing or wondering about, no, what should I wear today? What should I wear today? No, the decision has been made, and every day he just picks up and he goes. So if you can sort out your values and take time to sort out your personal mission statement, it's not about having the mission statement or having your values. It's about using it to make everyday decisions. Because if you have a point of reference, you can say yes to certain things, which will take you there, and no to other things that won't take you there. Without that in place, you will never know when you are losing your life in the Bermuda Triangle of life and living. So I really recommend that you do that. And one of the best places that I suggest you go to, I don't have that on the slide, but if you wouldn't mind just taking a Google or contacting me or Dan or Debbie afterwards, just go to your search engine, not now, and search for the phrase personal mission in brackets, in quotes, and also just add Covey, C-O-V-E-Y. That will take you to the Franklin Covey Company, and it's really a good exercise that takes you to developing your personal mission, family mission, and team mission. Okay, so what are we busy with at the moment? We know what this is about, slowing down to speed up. It's know why it's important to us. And now we are just talking about what you can do. And one of the first things I recommend is get your personal mission statement in place. It allows you, the personal mission statement, it's like a watershed. If it rains, some water goes this way, some water goes that way. If you don't have that in place, it's just one big puddle and a mess. So yeah, we discussed this actually. Your top priorities allows you to say yes to things that move you toward your priorities and to say no to things that don't take you away from that. Just as an example, I'm using golf as an example, although I played golf for a while, but you know, I stopped many years ago because I could never figure out what the short grass down the middle was for. I got value for my golf money. It's all over the show. Anyway, so if my priority is to improve my golf score, and then if you ask me to come and play snooker with you that afternoon, and my plan is to go and exercise golf, I know my top priority is better golfing. Then I say no to you, and I say yes to the golfing. Okay, so have that in place. Now, you may think, okay, my life is hectic and rushed and all of those things that came up in the beginning. What can you do to change? I would like to just share a few examples of you with the importance of changing your mindset, because that's where it all begins. High jump, way back, it used to be the scissors style. So when you did the high jump, what part of your body went over the crossbar first? The feet. Then that had a certain world record. Along came Dick Fosbury, who literally turned that belief 180 degrees around and went over the crossbar with his head first. What happened to the record? It improved. But if there wasn't a change in belief that, hey, let's do this differently, then nothing would have changed. Let me tell you a story quickly. Pardon me. I was walking in a bookstore one day down the aisle, and on the other side of the aisle was a young lady sitting on the floor, blocking the aisle with her back was to me. Now, what did I see? I saw a young lady blocking the aisle. What's the story I told myself, and how did I feel about that? I didn't feel very good because she was blocking the aisle. She doesn't care for anybody. How can she be so rude? And I was ready to, on the do side of things, to give her a piece of my mind when I walked past her. That would have given me a certain outcome, which probably would have reinforced the way that I saw her. In other words, my belief in my mindset about the situation determined or drove my attitude, my behavior, and the result that we were going to get. When I was ready to do this thing, and I kept on walking towards her. But when I came to her and I looked down, I saw that this lady did not have arms. So she was sitting on the floor, paging through a magazine using her toes. So how long do you think it took me to change my belief about the situation? Like instantly. And would you agree that the moment that changed, my attitude towards her, my behavior, and everything just changed? So the question is, how can I change? How can I get a better outcome or result? And here's a way to think about it. You must ask yourself the question, why am I getting what I'm getting? And going into reverse now. Why am I getting what I'm getting? Because I'm doing what I'm doing. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Because I believe certain things, because I have an attitude about this. And why do I have that? Because it's my belief system, my subconscious belief system that drives this. So there's much more we can say about this. And I'd like you to do a quick exercise. We have a few minutes more to do a quick exercise. Or let me rather put it this way. It's going to be maybe take 5 minutes or so. I would rather, with your permission, Debbie, just I'll send it to you and you can distribute it to people on the call. Just a short little exercise that I'm going to suggest to you. What you can do to change one of your beliefs about rushing. Debbie, will that be okay?
Perfect, Gerrit.
Okay, so we're going to do that then. So in the exercise, I'm going to ask you to identify when you rush, one thing you want to change, and then I'm going to point you to Byron Katie's work to ask the questions, is this belief true? Is it really true? Does it make me calm or stressed? How can I turn this around? And how would things be if I can turn it around? So this is what we're going to email you, just an exercise about doing that. So a few more opportunities to slow down. Planning. Often people rush planning. Now there's a video you can Google for the 4-hour house. There was this competition to build a house in 4 hours in the US many years ago. It took an inordinate amount of planning and communication, but they did it. They built a house in 3 hours and something minutes. Thinking. Do we spend enough time to think? This is not a slow down opportunity, and we now know that it's good to slow down because then we can speed up. When we communicate to people, one of the books that had a major impact for me along these lines of slowing down is the book by Carl Honore called In Praise of Slow. And he said what really got him was he was looking in a bookstore one day and he saw a book titled The 2-Minute Bedtime Story. And he said, hey, this is the book that I need, that I can put my kids to bed in 2 minutes. And then the penny dropped and he said, what am I thinking? I can't be efficient. The purpose is not to be efficient with bedtime stories and rush the bedtime story, but to be effective, to do the right things. So I think communicating, we can't be efficient in communicating, but can be effective in communicating, especially with listening. You know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Maybe we should use them more in that proportion. Again, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Take time to understand the other person. And yes, we can multitask. And typically the ladies say that they can multitask, but no, don't multitask, because multitasking is a myth. And we should actually talk about switch tasking and not multitasking. And every time you switch task, it's back to that example that I gave you in the beginning about the graph. You work, you switch task from email to phone calls. Your focus goes to nothing. And then you continue. And multitasking is a myth. Do not do this. And also replace the word in your mind with switch tasking. And you know, you can ask people to, if people use the word multitasking, just teach them a little bit and suggest to them switch tasking, because multitasking is screwing everything up simultaneously. It's one of the nicest definitions that I came across about multitasking. Let's talk about planning and your schedule. I'm sure that many people on today's webinar have back-to-back meetings, and it's just to, you know, it looks like this. Now, if something happens in this situation, you cannot move, you cannot change, you cannot adapt. And I think one of the important principles of being productive is adaptability, flexibility. There's one saying I really enjoy, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. So how can we be more flexible? How can we avoid packed calendars? And you can do that by integrating in your calendar something called the no-fly zone. Now, what does that mean? Let me illustrate. One of our clients in Durban closed his door, and he, in his calendar, which was shared with his colleagues, he entered no-fly zones, or NFZ. And he said to them, before you get up and move to my office and come and see if you can talk to me, check my calendar. And if I'm in NFZ time, don't even try to get close to me, because it will shoot you down. The CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner, he's specifically 30 to 90 minutes a day. He has unscheduled time or uncommitted time. And he says if he doesn't do that, then it's a strategic decision for him to do that. Because if he doesn't do it, he found himself in more meetings and more whatever and more rush. But the moment he put that into his calendar, life changed and became more effective. So a practical recommendation for you is to slow down, to speed up, also in your calendar. Because if you don't control your calendar, the rest of the world will. If you don't take charge, other people will. It's just a metaphor or an analogy that I suggest you use for your planning. Trellis thinking and planning. This plant, your life, your day-to-day life, wants to grow. If it's just on the ground, it will be just not a really beautiful plant. But if you give it a framework to grow against, and there's space in the framework, then the plant can grow and life can happen. It's not a solid wall. Give it a framework. So when you plan your week and when you plan your day, by all means, create the framework. I'm sure that, you know, when a professional rugby team or soccer team goes onto the field, they have a plan for the match. But the plan does not include that the fullback will be tackled halfway through the first half. The tackles in life happen all by themselves. But by all means, have a plan for the day. And then, you know, you can be flexible during the day. Again, if you don't take charge of your calendar, other people will. Flexibility means that you can enjoy moments. I had the privilege of being in a park one day, and we sat at this waterhole, and the lions came to drink, and we could hear them. Often, don't we have the mindset of, okay, I've got to. We've been. Let me ask you this way: do you think everybody in that group said, "Oh no, man, we've been sitting here for 7.5 minutes now. Let's move on to the elephants"? It doesn't work like that. Flexibility, enjoy the moment. But if you don't create space in your calendar, then you cannot create the moment. I just want to go back to, I'll keep this slide on what I talk about in the situation, about creating space in your calendar and pushing back. You know, one of the things that people ask you to do something, we say, yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Because we don't want to feel bad about them. We don't. It's an explosives factory, and the admin building was, as we can understand, quite far removed from the explosives area. And one of the managers who was in the admin building, he conditioned that we hopped on the scooters and there we went to see him. So one day when that happened, somebody had the courage to push back. And he said, well, you know, Dr. So-and-so, it's now 11 o'clock. I'm busy with the budget at the moment. I really would like to finish this job now. And he was like 4 kilometers away from the admin building. I'm in the admin building anyway this afternoon at 3. Is there a possibility that we can see each other around about 3 o'clock? And the answer was, yes, sure. But if you didn't push back, then nothing would have changed. And he would have ended up with back-to-back and rushed to the admin building and rushed back. So develop the courage to just challenge people. And if they ask you to do something, just ask him, but why are you asking me? Am I the right person to do this? Maybe I'm not the best qualified person to do this. So build flexible time into your calendars. Slow down when creating action reminders. Now, what you can do here, and I'm not going to do this in detail, is in your Outlook or Gmail or wherever, when you create a reminder, for example, I want to call Debbie. And when I call Debbie, I'd like to refer to this email. Don't wait until the phone call and then say something like, Debbie, yeah, sure, let me just get to that email, please, and then we can continue. That's wasting your time. That's creating unnecessary stress. When you create a reminder, call Debbie. Take the email and pop it into your reminder digitally. Or when you use a paper system, make notes then. So slow down when creating action reminders. Here's another example. And I would like to offer you, you can get this at no charge. And you're more than welcome to send me an email to request this. I'm not going to just send it to everybody because I don't want to send you something that you don't want. Now, what is this? We call it From Chaos to Order, a map for action. It's just a series of 9 questions you ask about anything coming your way. For example, an email. What is this email about? Oh, it's an email from Dan. Is it relevant? If not, trash. If yes, what must I do with it? File, action, or trash? I'm going very quickly now, but I'll send it to you if you want to. What is the action? And you think about it. Can I do it quickly? Can I delegate it? Must I do it on a specific day? In which case you park that in your calendar. Or can I do it as any time? In which case you use your tasks. Now, here's the question. Does it take time to ask these questions? Of course it does. It's just like a slow down thing. But what's the benefit of this? That if you do this consistently, your work will be clarified. Look down the right-hand side. Make your work visible and actionable. You take the time to do that, and then you can just act and do. If you want this, I'll send it to you. It's a PDF. Just make a note. Send it to my email. My email is Gerrit, Gerrit, at 789.co.za. Gerrit at 789.co.za. And be very efficient in the subject line. Don't write me long stories about the workshop or the webinar. In the subject line, just put MFA. Now, what does that stand for? Map for Action. And then a space, and then put EOM. Now, EOM is just shorthand for end of message. So if you want this map for action to help you slow down, to speed up, send me an email, Gerrit at 789.co.za, and in the subject line, MFA, EOM. Okay, we've discussed the listening. I mentioned that to you. The last thing I'd like to mention to you is to do a daily and a weekly Sisyphus. Now, what on earth is a Sisyphus? A Sisyphus is just the Latin name for a buffalo thorn tree. And the thorns in the Sisyphus mucronata look like this. There's a pair of thorns that forms when things change, a short thorn looking backward and a long thorn looking forward. Now, the Shangaan people say that life is like this. There's many changes in your life. Every change is an opportunity to look back and to look forward. And I like to link this to slow down, to speed up. Every day is a change. Every week is a change. Every month is a change. So I'd like to recommend to you that at the end of every day, review the day, the short thorn, and plan for tomorrow, keeping in mind the things that I said now. It's not difficult. It doesn't take weeks to do this. It's 10 minutes, maybe, if that long. What happened today? What worked? What didn't work? What can I learn from today to make tomorrow better? And then you think ahead for tomorrow, and you integrate that learning into tomorrow. But schedule this Sisyphus time into your day at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. That's up to you. The last thought then is simplify. David Allen again. You can do anything, but not everything. That is so true. You can have a plate, your life plate, and it can be full of stuff. And then people tell me often that my plate is so full and I don't know where it's coming from. But you allow things onto your plate. They don't just arrive by parachute and fill your plate. So in simplifying your life, my recommendation to you is break your big plate and get a smaller plate. It's impossible to fit all of that stuff onto a small plate. So get a smaller plate and learn to say no to things. This is just a process of pruning. And if you do that, pardon me, you can retreat, you can watch the dolphins in the water, you can watch the sunset, you can break away to the Tankwa Karoo, you can listen to the tokpokkies, you can enjoy the flowers, or like I did, you can at the top of Oberg Pass just enjoy the scenery, or pop over to Hong Kong to say hello to my first granddaughter. Now that all is kind of slow down to speed up stuff. Somebody once said, or I said, oh, I think this is the first picture of her smiling. And somebody else said, she just has a wind that has to come out. So you think what that does to my self-image when I think, oh, I created the first smile. Okay, I hope you found some value in what you discussed today. It's just on 10 o'clock. Thank you for joining us today, and I trust that you found some practical tips. Remember again, what is this all about? Do things at the appropriate speed. Why is it important? Avoid your Bermuda Triangle. Don't break your starfish. And then just some practical tips on what you could do to do this. Debbie, thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. And yeah, amen from my side.
Gerrit, thank you so much. I mean, I think a number of us have a lot of work to do on the runway. So there's a lot of very practical, usable tips you've given us. And I know that you're enormously generous about giving more information if anyone else needs. So please feel free to email us or Gerrit. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon if there's anything else we can do for you. Thanks
if there's
so much.
anybody, I just want to check with you, Debbie. I think we have, I'm available. If there's like a Q&A session, if anybody wants to ask something, more than happy to respond.
Perfect, absolutely. Let me have a look in chat. I have a number of people saying thank you, which might mean that they're logging off. But if anybody wants to take a few minutes to ask questions, Gerrit does have time, which I didn't realize. So we can slow down and ask some questions. Gerrit, maybe a question from me, because I see Karen Strauss also mentioned the runway. Can we go back to that runway? How do we prepare our runway?
Your question is, how do you prepare the runway?
Yes, well, how do we clear that runway, get the runway ready for the rest?
Yeah, I think clearing the runway is many of the tips that I shared at the end is helping to clear the runway. Let's just run to the runway again. What is a typical runway day? Make a list of everything you do during a day, and like phone calls, emails, driving, cooking, shopping, all of those things are runway things. But because we find difficulty often in saying no to people, we allow people just to fill our runways with stuff that is not relevant to us. So again, I think almost before you start cleaning the runway, it's that other idea of creating something like a personal mission or your top priorities. And then you use that as a point of reference, and then you just sweep everything off the runway that doesn't help you achieve those goals. Does that help?
Fantastic. Thanks, Gerrit. Any other questions? It looks like people might have organized their schedules back to back as we do. Maybe it'll change tomorrow, but I think that seems like we've all got value for today. So thank you so much, Gerrit. Thank you to all of you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Gerrit. That was very useful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.